The Union Trust Building is a Pittsburgh masterpiece of Flemish-Gothic architecture erected between 1915 and 1916. Designed by local architect Frederick Osterling, the structure was built on the site of the former St. Paul's Catholic Cathedral. Industrialist Henry Clay Frick financed the construction that was completed 3 years before his death. The Union Trust Company purchased the structure from the Frick estate in 1923 and remodeled the first 4 floors. The interior featured an arcade of 240 shops and galleries. Architecturally, the design is noteworthy for its mansard roof with terracotta dormiers and 2 chapels appearing as towers. The interior is crowned by a central rotunda and stained glass dome. The building would have never been constructed had an event from 23 years previously ended differently. Henry Clay Frick was a complicated individual depending upon the prism from which he is viewed. He was a shrewd businessman, passionate art collector, and very generous philanthropist towards the general public. He was equally ruthless with employees who generated his wealth. In June 1892, he slashed their wages, evicted workers from company housing, and attempted to destroy the Steelworkers Union. Amidst the subsequent workers' strike, he called in his private army of Pinkerton's security guards to aggressively combat picket lines with violence. 10 of his striking employees were killed. He didn't always get along with his business partners either. When he resigned from the board of directors of Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie demanded that he sell his entire stock holdings from the company, even if below market value. The pair ended up in litigation. Frick symbolized both the potential generosity and extreme worst traits of capitalism. He was a man of habits and generally enjoyed a late lunch with friends and associates at the Duquesne Club. The building was a short distance from his corporate office at the Chronicle Telegraph Building. On Saturday, July 23, 1892, he had just returned to his desk following lunch when Andrew Berkman burst in. Berkman was wearing a newly fitted black suit. Avoiding introduction, he pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and fired 2 close-range shots at Frick. One shot struck Frick's shoulder and the second his neck. Frick's associates wrestled Berkman to the ground. He fired a 3rd unsuccessful round, hitting the ceiling. Falling with his gun, he reached for a dagger in his pocket, wildly slashing at Frick's legs. He was finally subdued and arrested. Berkman unapologetically confessed that his motive was to revenge the recent armed attack on striking workers. Frick epitomized all of the ideals that he detested, and his attempted murder was a revolt to raise the consciousness of the working class. His own philosophy mirrored the popular anarchist policies of the era. Adherents had become alienated by the American economic transformation from agrarian to industrial jobs. Industrial workers were often consigned to living in cloistered urban slums, working 12 to 16-hour shifts, and suffering from unhealthy workplace environments. Berkman was no crazed or impulsive assassin. He had traveled to Pittsburgh days before his attack from Worcester, Massachusetts. He lived there with his mistress, Emma Goldman. She operated an ice cream parlor. Goldman would later become one of the most celebrated revolutionaries and proponents of socialism during the early 20th century. Berkman would serve a 14-year prison sentence for his attack. Upon his release, he became renowned for his anarchist beliefs through his writings and activism. He would accompany Goldman to Russia during the 1917 revolution. Both would leave disillusioned 4 years later over the terror tactics employed by the Bolsheviks. He continued his written works until the 1930s. He died in Nice, France during 1936 after suffering from extended ill health. Frick's Chronicle Telegraph Building would be demolished in 1963 to make way for the construction of the U.S. Steel Tower, the tallest skyscraper in Pittsburgh. The Union Trust Building has undergone several ownership transitions and was extensively restored in 2016.